Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy247 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast.
Welcome to Vandy247 Live. I'm Billy Derrick alongside Luke Wyatt here on a Wednesday morning for our roundtable episode. No Chris Lee today, though. No Joey, so it'll be just Luke and myself. We'll be answering your mailbag questions. We'll be talking all things Vanderbilt basketball. Look ahead to a huge game on Saturday against Texas, and we'll get to your chat questions right here live. If you're watching in the chat room, want to fire away any comments or questions, we'll get to those as well. But we got to get to our sponsor first. Our basketball coverage, all brought to you by the Wash House. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy? Well, let the professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. They got 2 locations in Nashville. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry, ready to be put away. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. Luke, let's hop right into it. Joey and I got our thoughts out last night after the loss to Florida. To me, it was kind of ho-hum. I mean, I didn't expect Vanderbilt to go in there and beat Florida, a top 10 team on the road. You know, that's tough to do, much less if you're at home. You know, right? Vanderbilt has shown that they can do that, beating Kentucky and Tennessee. But, Florida's really good. And Vanderbilt played better. I thought that was the big thing there, Luke, that they responded, especially in that first half. Things could have gone south after the Oklahoma loss, and they didn't. So I think that's encouraging. But at the end of the day, they got to start playing better defense. Luke, the second half defense these last 4 games has not been good at all. And if they don't start getting more stops late in these games, Byington said it after the game, we got to figure out how to get more stops, especially in the second half. And there's something with these second halves. I think first halves, they might be undefeated. I feel like they lead at half almost every game, just about. But I think it's hard for this team to finish because because of all the talent they're up against. I mean, you saw what Florida had with Richard and Condon down low. But, Luke, I wasn't surprised by the result last night, but it does make Saturday's game all that more important.
No, Saturday is huge. After Saturday, we play 6 straight ranked opponents and then finished up the year with Texas, Arkansas, and Georgia. So, we're right in the thick of it. Now, this is the midway point. We're sitting on 4-5 with 4 home games. We had 4 home games and we had 5 on the road. So in the back half, we do get 5 at home and only 4 on the road. So that's important, I think, because I still think we need to get 3 more wins for sure. Really, we need 4 of the last 9 to assure that we're in. And you're going to have to probably go 3-2 at home and then pick up a road win. That's the formula I see. But touching on last night and really go back to last week, I have a comparison last week to the Georgia State football week. You had Jalen Carey, whatever that happened disciplinary-wise.
Yeah.
It was a full week off. So obviously the week didn't go well. Whether there was distractions or whatever, I don't know. And once we got through the first 15 minutes of the game, I felt we were okay. But, man, the last 5 minutes of the first half and the second half, I felt like for the first time under Mark Byington, those kids let go of the rope. And you don't want to see that. Now, you're also going to lay an egg. It was game 22, and we hadn't really played a horrible game, and that was it. And then coming into last night, again, like you said, the variance in basketball is unbelievable. Tennessee loses to them by 30 in Gainesville. Then they turn around and beat them by 20 at home. So it's a 50-point variance with the same two teams. And Tennessee even had 2 starters missing. So how does that make sense? It doesn't. It's just every game's different. Every night's different. I thought last night that we toward the end of the game, we got in foul trouble when Carey fouled out, McLaughlin fouled out. We're not deep enough to handle that. It doesn't matter who we're playing. We'd have lost Austin P if we didn't have those guys. And it was close. So, we're fine though. We are, if you told me we're going to be 16-6 at this point, I'd take it every time.
Yeah, I mean, especially in SEC basketball, Luke, you cannot get too high or too low. I mean, take Tennessee, for example, after the Florida loss, in Gainesville, they lose by 30. Well, week and a half later, they come home and beat them by 20. I mean, there's all kinds of results like that. It's a meat grinder. And that's why, you just don't know. I mean, Kentucky goes on the road against Ole Miss and they were down by 25 at one point in that game. Going on the road is hard. I'd love to see the road record for teams in the SEC at the end of the year, because I mean, it's just different. And Luke, especially with Vanderbilt, teams have shot a lot. I feel like a lot better against Vanderbilt when they're at home, right? When Vandy travels. I mean, Oklahoma shot the lights out. They shot 72% in the second half. Florida shot 66% from 3 in the second half. Vanderbilt shot only 33. So I do think, and I told this to Joey all the time, when Nickel makes 3 or 4 threes, this team is winning. And he had, the last couple of games, he struggled a little bit. He feels like a shooter at home where, he's played really well at home, Luke, and he's hit some big shots. So I look forward to that on Saturday with Nickel getting back into the fold. I've noticed Huffman's minutes have gone down. He only played 7 minutes last night. Magnon only played 14 minutes last night. So I still think Byington's trying to figure out who to play and when to play them, right? And it's kind of crazy to say that at this point in the season, but that's kind of the hand he was dealt.
Well, I think the problem we have with Magnon and I'm sorry, who else were we talking? Oh, Huffman. You can't have both of them on the floor at the same time because then your offense, you only got 3 scorers. I feel like that we always, it seems like Edwards has been the most consistent, obviously. And then between Devin and Jalen, one of them's going to have a big night or both of them contribute like they did last night. But it's been that third scorer. We haven't had that third guy step up, whether it be Nickel or Hogard. In the games we've won, it's been one of those 2 guys. So you're right. Nickel or Hogard or someone has to do better offensively for us to finish off games.
And I don't know if you saw, I know you watched the whole game, but the first half, there was a sequence where there were a couple of tackles made. Oh. I mean, that first half was a football game for about 3 or 4 minutes of that game. And then they completely changed at half. I mean, at half, the ref said, okay, let's cut this crap. We're swallowing, we're not swallowing our whistles as much anymore. And they stopped letting everything go in the second half. And I told Joey last night, I thought that played into Florida a little bit. I mean, they called some ticky-tack fouls on McLaughlin and Carey. Carey's 5th foul I didn't think was a foul. Now, it's for both sides, right? But I thought it helped Florida and hurt Vandy that they did that because Luke, if Vandy gets refs like that in the first half that really let things go, I think they're in good shape a lot of games because that's how they play. They play with some bumps and some, their clean strips at times maybe don't look so clean. Maybe they get some hand, but they don't call them. I thought that played into Florida. I thought that affected the game. Now, Florida made shots, right? But I thought that definitely affected the game. It totally changed in the second half, the way they called it.
Yeah, and anytime you go on the road in the SEC, we all talk about how tough the road is. I think officiating favors the home team most games, not every game. There's been some in our gym that didn't favor us, and I'm sure there's been some that didn't favor Florida on their floor. But most nights, when you go on the road, the officiating tends to flow toward the home team. I don't know whether that's by design, whether that's human nature, when the crowd reacts. I don't know. But it's kind of always been that way. It really has. And I tell you, the key for me last night was, we're doing a pretty good job against them against threes, and then two guys who don't ever shoot them, much less make them, hit back to back. They get 4 threes. So when you get unexpectedly making threes, it's almost too much to overcome.
All right, one more note before we get to the mailbag. I asked this to Joey last night. Do you think Texas is a must-win game? It's easy to say yes, because you've got just an absolute gauntlet coming up. But is this a must-win game on Saturday in your mind?
It's critical. I don't think it's must. And the reason I say it's not must is because, okay, if you lose to Texas, the way I was looking at it, and it never works out the way you think, but those next 6 against all ranked opponents, I had us only winning 1 of those. So now if you lose to Texas, then you got to somehow win 2 of those 6, because it's going to probably come down to that last game against Georgia that's looming like it could be huge for us, either for seeding or to, depending on where we're at in Ken Palm and all that, it could be a do or die game where we're on that cut line to make NCAA or NIT.
I'm with you. I think I don't know if I'd go as far to say absolute must win, but it's pretty close. It is pretty close. Ken Palm right now has Texas winning by 1, 76-75. And the only games that Vanderbilt has the highest percentage to win is Texas 47%, Mississippi State 40%, Missouri 42%, and Arkansas 60%. So, those are some high percentages for Vanderbilt, but everyone else is around 10%, 13%. So, gauntlet coming up for Vanderbilt. We will, of course, continue to talk about it, of course, with Texas coming up on Saturday. Again, if you guys have any comments or questions in the chat room on YouTube, feel free to fire away. But, Luke, we're going to hop into the mailbag here with some of these questions. The mailbag brought to you by Sutherland and Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. They sponsor the chat room, of course, and today's mailbag questions. If your loved one has been hurt or in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call at 615-846-6200 to see what your rights are and if they can help. All right, we got a 4-part question here from Pessimistic Door on the board. Number 1, are the deficiencies with the men's basketball team's second half defense and scoring fixable this year in your mind, Luke?
When you say fixable, it means that guys can't come off the bench and make threes that haven't made them all year, which happened to us a couple times last night. Secondly, I think we get in so much foul trouble because of the way we play and the way the game's called that by the time we get to the final 10 minutes, a lot of times we're trying to protect guys from fouling out or getting their 4th or 5th foul. And I think that's what's got to be addressed. If we can get through the first half maybe with not getting in foul trouble, I think that's key to us winning games.
Well, in the last 4 games in the second halves, Vandy's defense has given up an average of 52 points per game. So now that's the last 4 games. That's not a season average or anything. That'd be awful if that was season or even SEC average. I think the defense is fixable because, we've seen it, and maybe it's a home road thing, right? At home, Vanderbilt's second half defense has been a lot better. You saw it against Kentucky, create momentum. You saw it against Tennessee as well. Even South Carolina, right? They were scoring off turnovers. I think the defense there is fixable the second half. The scoring, I still have some questions. Like Hoggard only had 7 points last night. Now he facilitated. He had 6 assists. I think you need a little bit more from him. I think you obviously need more from Nickel. Like we talked about earlier, Luke. Edwards, it's hard to nitpick him at all. I know he missed a couple of free throws last night, but he had 20 points, 5 straight games with 18 or more points. So what, like you said, he's consistent. You know what you're getting with Edwards, but I think the scoring, I still have more questions about that. And I know Carey getting back, after the whatever happened against Oklahoma, that's big, and McLaughlin. But, as bad as the defense has been, I still have, there's still some droughts, like 3-4 minute droughts that this team goes on. I think the defense is definitely fixable. The offense, I still have a couple more questions there just about how do they score consistently, because that's ultimately what matters in these games. Number two, if you had to take the over-under of this team making the tournament, what would be your official prediction? The over-under of this team making the tournament. I don't know if that's a number. I mean, yes or no?
I say that there's a 60% chance we make it. So 60-40.
I think that's a lot higher than some computers. I saw ESPN, and this is ESPN, right? It's, it's a predictive metric, but they had 17% chance.
Wow.
I think I looked, yeah. And that's the thing, I know their strength of schedule, it's like number 2, right there up with Alabama, who's at number 1 remaining. But, you beat Kentucky at home, you beat Tennessee at home. What makes, I'm not trying to argue with computers, but what makes these people think that Vanderbilt can't beat Texas on Saturday? And Auburn, I think they've got a puncher's chance. I wouldn't predict them to beat Auburn, but they've played well at home. What about Ole Miss at home? What about that Missouri game at home on Saturday? They've been that good at home, Luca. I'm kind of leaning toward you. Like, what makes people think they couldn't win those?
Yeah, unless we go 2-7 in the last 9, we're going to have a shot. Because if we go 3, that's 19-12. We win 3 more. 19-12, and then I know they say, well, the tournament doesn't matter, but I do think this year there's so many teams fighting for those last couple of spots in the SEC that the SEC tournament may matter this year more than usual.
It should. It should matter because there's going to be teams. Yeah, there's going to be teams like a Vandy, a Georgia, an Oklahoma, maybe even an Arkansas that are right there. Yeah. And they've got those opportunities to beat SEC teams. That could happen to Vanderbilt. I think that Georgia game is going to be huge. Like you said, Luke, that could be the determining, does that get them to 7? If so, they probably got to do some work in Nashville. If that gets them to 8, they're in, right? If you get to 8, you're in.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay. There's a couple good ones here. Will the men's basketball team win a road game the rest of the year? Georgia is the easiest opponent, but they're a bubble team as well. That's a good question. You got Tennessee a week from Saturday in Knoxville, and then you go to Kentucky that next Wednesday. That's never easy, of course. At Texas A&M, brutal, and then Georgia on the road. Georgia's not ranked in the top 25, but they're still a bubble team. That would be my guess, if any of those. Luke, I think they match up well with Kentucky. And again, I'm not going to predict them to beat Kentucky on the road, but I think Kentucky and A&M maybe. I don't see them beating Tennessee for a second time in Knoxville, but I think Kentucky and Texas A&M maybe, and then Georgia, I could definitely see them beating Georgia.
Yeah, well, I think they'll get one of them that we're not expecting. If you can get another team to shoot 3 of 25 from 3 or something, you can beat anybody. Yeah. It just takes that. And like I said, there's such a high variance sport. When you have Oklahoma beats us by 30, then they lose by 30 last night. So, it's every game's different. And that's what makes it fun. It really does. I have some concerns with where the game's officiated. I really do. You can take your arm and pop somebody right in the chest, which should be an offensive foul, and there's nothing called. And you see it every night in every game. That's not basketball, in my opinion, but we'll see.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about I think you're talking about last night's Auburn game. It happened in that one, too, where one of the Oklahoma players just, gave an elbow to Baker Mazzara and nothing happened. So, if you're going to let that go, let it go on the other side too. But then you're at risk.
That's the other thing. I don't understand. You reach in and touch somebody's hand on the perimeter, they'll call a foul. It's so inconsistent.
The difference between the first half and second half last night was kind of laughable. They started instantly in the second half. They started calling some real ticky-tack stuff that they weren't even thinking about. There were a couple of tackles made in the first half, and they didn't call them. So I think refs don't make that decision at half. Make that before the game where, that's where I'm at, Luke. Like, make that decision before the game mentally as opposed to switching it up because that changes the flow of it. Last part here from Pessimistic Door, 4th question. How much are they at risk, the football team, of losing Randon Fontenette. Of course, some people worried about his tweet. He said, "I'm going to do what's best for me when it's all said and done," a couple of days ago. Who knows what that means? Who knows what he's referencing? Luke, are you worried?
You worry about every player that you want to keep because obviously anybody would want Randon Fontenette in their secondary, anybody. So, yeah, absolutely, you have to worry about that. You have to worry about, until Diego's came out, he and Eli, you had to worry about them. I mean, there's kids on every squad that you have to think, my goodness, we're going to be in a war to keep them. And Randon's comment to me means, okay, Vanderbilt's saying, let's get through spring ball, and here's what we're going to offer you, and let's see where we're at. That may be what he's talking about. That may be saying, okay, if they don't offer me enough, I've got to go. And he's made that clear with coaching staff. I don't know that. I'm just saying that could be where he's coming from.
Yeah, let's go back 2 years ago when London Humphreys leaves, right? Randon Fontenette would probably already be out the door because Vanderbilt, their staff, they weren't thinking the way they're thinking now. They weren't operating the way they're operating now. They didn't have the money they have now. So that's the good thing that, he'd already be gone. I think if he was going to leave, he'd already be gone anyway. Again, could be wrong, but I think I know he's got a great relationship with Clark Lee, as well as, Jimmy Thompson, who's the Anchorage coach, and all the defensive staff. I don't think he's leaving. I don't think anybody should be worried about Randon. Also, Vandy fan 615. Is Mark Byington going to shorten his rotation, or is it just his philosophy to play a lot of guys significant minutes? And I like this question because I got to this last night, and I know a lot of people on the board were not happy with Edwards' minutes. But, Luke, he played 31 minutes, and Hogard played 28 minutes. And when you look at Florida, Will Richard, who went off, had 21 points. He played 39 minutes. And then Aberdeen, their backup point guard for Clayton, who was hurt, he played like 33 or 34. So, and maybe this is just where they're at in the season. Maybe a few games from now, we'll see Edwards start to play almost 40 and Hogard almost 40. But I don't know how much longer you can afford to play Edwards just 31 instead of maybe 35 or 36, or even Hogard. Like, are you with me there, Luke? Because I thought he sat a little too long at times last night. And I know defensively he can struggle at times, but you need his scoring, and a common theme on whenever Vanderbilt's opponents go on runs is Edwards on the bench, right? That's what you look at. It's because Edwards is out. It's not the only answer there, but I don't know how much. I don't think you can go much longer with Edwards and Hogard. I don't know how many minutes they're averaging, but I think Edwards, I know 31's not a slouch minutes-wise, but maybe you need a little more.
I think Coach Byington has a bit of a conundrum because Jason's a slight kid. And if you notice how many times he gets hit when he's going into the basket, a lot of fouls aren't called because he's so slight, he's light, and he flies around. And I think he takes a lot of punishment. So 31 minutes for him is a lot of time on the floor with the physicality of this league. I do think as the season wears on, if we get into a situation where, okay, we got a couple of must-wins here or a must-win, you may see him play more minutes. To me, the biggest thing is you can't have, like I said earlier, a couple of guys on the floor at the same time to where your offense is at a 10% rate. When you have a Huffman and Magnon on the floor at the same time and trying to score with those five, no matter, pick the other three, whoever it may be, that's tough because they're good defensively and they do a lot of good things. But if you've got to put the ball in the hole, you can't have two guys out there that just aren't doing it very well.
Willie on YouTube says Edwards and Hogard cannot be averaging 25 minutes per game. I didn't know that's what they were actually averaging. That's why that's what they're averaging on the season. I had no idea it was only 25 minutes. And I agree with Willie there. And maybe, again, Luke, that's where they're at in the season. Right. And that's a good point you make on Edwards because he was on Elijah Martin a lot of the game last night, who's 6'3", 6'4", wouldn't be surprised if he's 220, 230. And he didn't play terribly on him defensively, and I think he's playing better defensively. But that's a good point you bring up on Edwards, because maybe you sub in, a Magnon for Edwards and a couple of defensive possessions, but you sacrifice offense. That's just kind of where they're at right now. So I do think you make a good point there.
One other
Billy.
Coach Bynum said in his press conference, which tells me he's not going to shorten the rotation, he felt like they could wear Florida down. So he, playing the 9 or 10 guys, 9, and then JQ plays limited minutes, but he does play. So we're playing 10, and they were playing 8 because of a couple of injuries or foul trouble. So I think his philosophy is, in most games, let's wear them down.
Yeah, and Carey and McLaughlin are so important to this team, and we know Edwards and Hogard are as well, but you saw what this team looks like without just one of them. But with both of them out the last, couple of minutes there, it's not a pretty sight, right? No. So, especially down low. And Florida's just, they've got an embarrassment of riches down there with their post players. Vanderbilt just doesn't have it. Carey, I think, is going to be so big down the stretch here. I think you've got to be able to get him the ball and say, go get us a bucket down low a lot on a lot of possessions here, because they're going to – the teams are defending the 3 a little bit better here now, especially these last couple of games. Between Edwards and Nickel, they only got up 6 threes last night. So you have to continue to find new ways to score, also find new ways to get stops. It's just constant adjustments for Coach Byington. Another question here from B. Sheridan 15 on the board. If you were Byington, what would you say to keep the team confident and focused on securing an NCAA tournament bid, especially after the last 2 games? They must feel a bit dejected.
No, I don't think kids think that way nowadays. When you've got 9 games in front of you, you're only at the midway point of the season, and you've already beat 2 at the time top 8 teams in the home floor. You have the confidence to beat people. I don't think it has anything to do with confidence. It's having to show up every game and give your very best. It's hard for anybody to do that. Even Auburn, as good as they are, they've had a couple of, South Carolina hasn't won a game, and they only beat South Carolina by 3 points, and we're lucky to do it. So there you go. That's that variance again. And I think the kids are smart enough to realize we just have to keep grinding, and it'll come. We'll have a game that's complete instead of that 4 or 5 minute hole where we don't score and give up a bunch of easy buckets. I think that's coming. I don't see any problem there.
Yeah, I think the right team is coming at the right time and the right place for Vanderbilt on Saturday. I think Texas is good. They've got talent, but they're not extremely physical. And, I think Vanderbilt has an opportunity to impose their will on Saturday. Obviously, you've got to contain. You're not going to stop Trey Johnson. You've got to contain him. But Clay on YouTube has a question. Think the real UT brings any fans this weekend to Nashville?
They'll have a couple of thousand probably, I'm guessing, and we'll have our 7,000. So, there'll be 9 or 10,000 in the gym, I think. Now, there's been a big push for ticket sales, so I don't know how that's gone. It being at noon on Saturday is a good time. That's probably the best time for Vandy basketball to draw a good crowd. So we may reach the 10,000 mark.
Well, this will be a good litmus test after Tennessee and Kentucky. You don't have a fan, you're not in danger of a fan base coming to take over Memorial. I think this will be a good litmus test of, okay, you said 7,000 Vandy fans. Do they get, do we, by the end of the day, think there's more that show up, that end up showing up than that, or somehow less, right? But Willie does say Texas is surging. They are. They've played well as of late, like a lot of these teams that are starting to get hot, and because they have to. Oklahoma, they had to win on Saturday.
Yeah.
Texas, you look at them, they've got Arkansas tonight, which, Arkansas is another team that's surging, but Texas, they beat LSU on the road on Saturday by 30. LSU isn't very good, but still, they beat Texas A&M at home by 1. They also beat Missouri. That's a really good win for Texas. That was a home game as well. They beat Oklahoma on the road. So they've got some really good wins. They're very capable, and they are a tournament team right now, according to Lenardi. But they're on that bubble right there with Vandy. This is important, Luke. But again, I'm with you. I think if you get nickel going and you play more to your identity, they played more to their identity against Florida. You should be fine. I don't think it's panic mode time. Now, if you lose this one Saturday, I think potentially you could start a little bit of panic. But this is a great opportunity for this team, and I think they've got as good of a chance as any of the home games they've got to win this one.
I'm gonna make a little prediction about Saturday on how you can tell if it's going to go well or not go well. When you look at the stat board at halftime, forget the score, whether it's within 10 points either way. If we have a bunch of fouls, let's say we have 9 team fouls and they had 3, you can forget we're not going to win. We have to be the one with the lesser fouls, so that when it gets down to the last 10 minutes, we don't have to worry about Jalen fouling out or Devin fouling out or Edwards fouling out. That's when we get tentative defensively, and it kind of, they get dunks and layups.
Well, and you can see it on Byington's face. I think it was Carey that picked up a foul. He knows when they get in foul trouble, it starts to be danger time. So that's all the mailbag questions we got. We got to all the chat and comment questions as well. Appreciate everybody bringing in their questions. Hopefully we'll get Chris back next week. If we need to, we'll get Joey back. But big one for Vandy on Saturday, Luke, and we'll see what happens. But appreciate you taking the time. Appreciate everybody coming in here today. Want to mention a few more things. Give us a review and a 5-star rating. That helps us get noticed. If you're listening, you haven't subscribed to Vandy247.com yet, please do. Still got some deals going on there, so that helps us tremendously as well. Subscribe to our Vandy247 Sports YouTube channel. That's free right here. Like this video, comment, subscribe, whatever you got to do. Also, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. For Luke Wyatt, I'm Billy Derrick. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again soon with more episodes of the Vandy 24/7 podcast.